Live from Wisconsin, it's Play That Rock and Roll.
We are joined by Milwaukee radio legend Steve Palec, host of Rock and Roll Roots, which had an incredible run, hell of a run. Miss you on the radio, dude. How you doing?
I'm good. I did that show live every Sunday morning for 34 years, so I don't miss an alarm clock on Sunday mornings anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I do miss the creative outlet, though. It was so cool to have a show in which, after spending decades on the radio, having people say, shut up and play the music. It was so cool to have the freedom to respect an audience, because audiences don't mind if you tell them an interesting story, and they don't mind hearing things that aren't hits if it resonates for whatever reason. Maybe they remember it, maybe they are open to liking it. And so respect of an audience really allowed me to do what I love to do for 34 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I told you before, I discovered so much music just by tuning in on Sundays. Before we get started, I got to show you this. Since I'm talking to the author of In All, Baseball, Beatles, and Bourbon, I didn't want to let you down. I have a drink tonight.
Good for you.
I have Heaven's Door, Homesick Blues, Minnesota Bourbon, 122 proof.
That is Bob Dylan's bourbon.
Yes, sir.
Excellent bourbon, too.
Yeah. I'm going to pour myself a small amount of that. For those who want to learn about bourbon and the Kentucky Chew, they should check out our previous interview, which kind of went viral on TikTok not too long ago. But today we are here. I wanted to have you on because, sadly, as you know, Dave Mason, great songwriter, passed away a couple of weeks ago. And, talking about your radio show, Rock and Roll Roots, to me, that show, more than anything else, was about songwriters. Mm-hmm. John Prine, Bruce Springsteen. Dave Mason is absolutely one of those guys. When I think of your show, that one of the names that comes up. So I definitely want to ask you about your experiences with him. But let's start where it started for you. When you were here last, you told a great story about how you discovered John Prine. Mm-hmm. How did you discover Dave Mason, and what locked you in as a fan?
I can remember distinctly, it was freshman year at college. I was living in the dorms, and back then I was pretty lucky, because coming out of high school, during high school, I had done radio commercials for a record store, and they paid me in albums. So I got to take home 5-6 great albums a week. So I had amassed a pretty good record collection by then. And I brought it with me to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, had it in the dorm room. And one thing that was kind of cool was that all the people in the dorm would hang out at night and share albums, listen to different types of music. And somebody came in with something I had never heard before. Dave Mason, an album called It's Like You Never Left, early 70s. And it blew me away. I just thought, this guy is so good. I came to discover later that George Harrison plays slide guitar on that album. And it was Dave Mason that taught George Harrison how to play slide guitar. David Crosby and Graham Nash sing on that album. Stevie Wonder plays harmonica. And I listened to that album over and over. I wore it out. And it was the moment where I can pinpoint discovering the music of Dave Mason. I went back to find his previous 2 albums, which I loved, both of those. But I have to confess, I did not know a lot. I had heard it, but I hadn't really dwelled on it. I did not know about his prior group, which was Traffic. Now, we all knew Traffic's songs, but I'm discovering the roots of a lot of those songs, and what would later become some problems between Dave Mason and Steve Winwood because of different styles. But you could hear Dave Mason's style even with Traffic, and the legendary song that he did, Feeling All Right, which he did originally with Traffic.
Yeah. Such a great song. Such a great song. When you hosted the radio show Rock and Roll Roots, and you would feature Dave's music, and I know you did episodes about him.
Mhm.
When you were thinking about the audience that was tuning in, what were you hoping that the audience would take away from listening to these songs?
I had hoped that it wasn't so obviously self-indulgent, that I was doing it because I really, really wanted to. And I liked him, I liked his music, and I wanted to play it. But I don't possess any great unique talent. I can't play any musical instrument besides a turntable, but I do think that I have a melodic ear, and I like all types of music. And things that are esoteric, to me, to enjoy it, it has to have some type of melody or be something that strikes me as, okay, I can feel this, I like this. And so all I was hoping, Joe, was that people would like it the same way that I liked the melodic aspect of the music. And there were times, I admit, I'd say prior to a song, hey, listen to these lyrics, really try to listen to this. But for the most part, I just hoped that they would pick up on the good sound. And I think it was proven out by the quality of music during his career. Dave Mason is one of many, many artists that you say to people, hey, do you like Dave Mason? Do you know John Prine? Do you like Steve Forbert? On and on and on, and they look at you like, I don't know. But then again, they would hear a song and go, oh yeah, feeling all right, I know that. Or we just disagree, I know that. And there's so many Dave Mason songs that are like that. Only you know and I know. I'm sure at some point, if you don't know Dave Mason, you've probably heard that song, whether from Delaney and Bonnie or one of the many incarnations of it. He plays on All Along the Watchtower with Jimi Hendrix.
Nice.
He's on Gimme Shelter from the Stones. He was in the studio when the Beatles were recording Sgt. Pepper. And of course, his own music is great. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Traffic. But I once asked him, is there anybody that, knowing that Fleetwood Mac asked him to join, all these artists have played with him, and he's played with many others. I said, is there anybody that's ever asked you to play that would really surprise us? And he said yes. That was it.
Okay, that brings me to my next question, because yes, you did interview him, and I know you've talked to him on a number of occasions. Tell me what he was like in person on a one-on-one basis, and then also speak a little bit more to what he was like for you as a radio host.
Well, there's always a hesitancy that comes when A, you meet your heroes, and B, a hesitancy I have when someone says, well, what are they like? How would I know? I mean, I mean, I will say this, I talked to him on the phone once, and there was some chaos going on in his house, and I'm like, there's a great opportunity. I can find out what he's really like. And it gave me a little bit of insight. But no, I don't profess to really know him. I'll share with you, I have met him in person on 3 occasions. The first time wasn't all that pleasant. It was at Summerfest, and he was on a bill with Ambrosia, Colin Hay from Men at Work. I'm trying to remember who else was on that show. There were like 5 different acts. And
At the amphitheater?
What's that?
At the amphitheater?
Yes.
Oh.
And I only met him backstage briefly, and he kind of blew me off, and he was preoccupied. And, I was just the MC introducing all the different acts. I don't remember if it was at the amphitheater or a side stage, come to think of it, but There's a lot I don't remember about that night, but I do remember that was a meet your hero moment where, you know, he was smoking a cigar and with a beautiful woman and walked right by me.
Mm.
Second time I met him was backstage. I was introducing him. I don't remember where it was, but we had a little more time to talk. And again, he was very controlled, very quiet. I've interviewed him on the phone 3 times. Again, not real verbose, didn't really talk a lot. Might have been, and again, I'm always hesitant because he could be gregarious in other situations, and I'm not a psychologist.
Right.
But when he was a little kid, I think 5 or 6 years old, he was hospitalized for 18 months and actually immobilized for a good part of that. And, you know, I remember asking him at one point, you know, was any of your musical interest precipitated by those 18 months of solitude? And he said no. But again, I mean, you know, that can make you a pretty quiet, introspective person for the rest of your life. But you reminded me and blew me away recently when you posted a photograph of something I didn't even know had photographic proof. It was the one time that I sat down with Dave Mason and felt like we were hanging and we were getting along, and it was great. It was backstage when he was opening up for Steve Miller at the Wisconsin State Fair. And that was an occasion where we had the opportunity to really get to know each other a little. And then he totally freaked me out, not only by how nice he was, but as we were done talking, it was time for him to go on stage. He said, and I was with my wife, and he said, here, why don't you guys sit over here? And he had someone set up 2 folding chairs on the stage. And we sat there. I was so self-conscious. You know, because I'm looking at the crowd, and I gotta think people are wondering, what is that goofball doing sitting on a folding chair next to Dave Mason during a show? But that's how nice he was that day.
Yeah, that is awesome. You know, I hadn't looked at that picture like since, you know, that night. And at the time, I wasn't really a big fan of his. I came around a little bit later, so I never noticed that. Yeah, you're on stage, you're in that picture, and it's a, you know, proof that you and I have been to a lot of the same concerts.
Yeah,
So I
and
love that.
that was what, 2010, I think.
Yeah, 2010. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was there. I was there with a lot of friends to see Steve Miller. And what the highlight of the night, though, even though at the time I really wasn't a big Dave Mason guy, was when Dave came back out on stage with Gerald Johnson and did a jam with Steve, because Gerald used to be in Steve's band.
Exactly right. And I was long gone by that time because, first of all, I was so freaked out by sitting on the stage for an entire show. And I'll tell you very quickly, at one point, as I'm like sitting there thinking, this is bizarre, I could just tell someone was behind me over my shoulder. And I was half expecting there would be somebody going, come on, come with me, let's go. Yeah. And then he moved around a little, and I could tell he was still back there. And I finally looked over, and I could see a camera. He was taking photos. And then I looked at his face, and it was Steve Miller.
Oh, my
so
God.
Steve Miller was a Dave Mason fan. But yeah, again, another aspect of that evening that freaked me out was during the last song, which I think might have been All Along the Watchtower, but I again, you know, my memory is very suspect. The speakers went out that project back to the artist so they can hear what they're doing. And Dave was basically driving blind and couldn't hear what he was playing, and he was visibly upset. And he was, you know, trying to signal to people, and you know, he just plowed through, got through the song. And I will never forget this. You can tell when someone's angry. You can tell when they are mad. And again, here I am, self-conscious with my wife, sitting on folding chairs. He finishes, And I'm like, well, what do we do? And I get up to slink away, and he turned and looked at me, and in an instant, he went from mad to nice again. And that was my last in-person interaction with one of my heroes, great songwriter, Dave Mason.
Oh man, that's fantastic! What a great story.
Yeah.
Especially because you said the first couple interactions weren't necessarily that great, but yeah, I didn't, I like I said, I wasn't a big fan when I saw him that night, but I caught up and figured him out a little bit later. I saw him in 2022 opening for Marshall Tucker. Now, normally I'm not negative about these things, but I have to say Marshall Tucker that night was awful.
Oh,
But
really?
what saved the night was Dave Mason was awesome. Like he even played a new song that I really liked, and how often does that sort of thing happen?
Yeah.
Were there other times you'd seen him?
Yeah, I think there were a few other times, but not to derail you, but my love of his music really came from either social situations, hanging out, listening, headphones on, being in the car. And that's the brilliance of music. And one of the reasons why you should be careful meeting your heroes or even artists that you really respect or have touched you emotionally, because they don't owe you the same interactions that you get when you're feeling music. So to me, the fact that, I met him 3 times, interviewed him on the phone 3 times, really pales in comparison to the place that he holds in my heart from those songs. And seeing him live was almost I was impressed by his skill, but it's not his responsibility to touch me emotionally the way some of those songs did. So that's what I always took with me, is that I loved all that music that he made over decades and decades, and everything else was just a plus. Even reading his book, which was phenomenal, it was just, I remember just thinking, I'm enjoying this, but it all pales in comparison to the way his music got into my DNA. Now, I do want to share something with you that most people don't know. There are, having lived through the release of so much of this music, because I paid attention, when I was 12 years old in 1964, hearing the Beatles, and every bit of music I heard after that was like building blocks to things that, I'll never forget. So I love little trivia questions that you can blow people away with. And one of my favorites is "We Just Disagree" was his biggest hit, even though I mentioned "Feeling All Right," "Only You Know and I Know," "You Shouldn't Have Took More Than You Gave," "Let It Flow," so many other songs that were great. But people know Dave Mason from "We Just Disagree," which he did not write, even though he's a great songwriter. It was written by Jim Krieger from Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was telling me something about that.
Now get this. What other song, I guarantee that did Jim Krieger write besides "We Just Disagree"?
I'm going to guess, just because my dad was here talking to me about this literally today. Were they involved with Badfinger? And was it Baby Blue?
Nope.
Oh, okay, then I have no idea.
Yeah, you'll never get it. So I got to go. I have no reason to drag this out, except that it's so awesome of a trivia question. Jim Krieger wrote "We Just Disagree," and he also wrote "The Bears Still Suck."
Oh my God!
Isn't that something?
That's amazing. That's the best piece of trivia ever dropped on the show.
Very
Wonderful.
cool. Yeah.
They got a reputation that's mostly based on luck. The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. The
Oh, and that's a tough one. Which one's better? Those are both very good.
Right. And you know, there are Bears fans that don't appreciate that. But what can I say? I mean, I asked Dave Mason about Jim Krieger, and we got off on a discussion about brats. So Jim Krieger had an impact on Dave Mason that goes beyond writing his biggest hit.
That is terrific and a great Wisconsin connection. I love that. Well, before you go, you know, talking about meeting your heroes and, you know, these people that we love their music, you have an event coming up in 2 weeks on May 19th at Shank Hall. You're going to be doing an evening of words and music with Phil Manzanera from Roxy Music. So I once saw you talk with Max Weinberg on stage. Is this going to be a little different? What's this event all about?
So Phil Manzanera has written a book, and it's called Revolution to Roxy. And I really like the fact that we've emailed, and he said, I don't want to know what you're going to ask me. And those are the best kind of conversations rather than interviews. But he is doing a national tour right now. And I can't even verbalize how fascinating this guy is. I didn't know it, I'll confess it to you, until I finished the book. But he is just an amazing human being. So I think if I can at all convey the type of sparks in a conversation that could get him to share even 1/100th of what he has lived through, I think the crowd is going to enjoy it tremendously. I believe what he does is both have a conversation about his life, about Roxy Music, talk to the audience, answer some questions, and play music. So it'll be a combination of something very similar to what I had a great honor of doing once with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, which is going back and forth between stories and experiences that he's had, what's behind these songs, what's behind him, and getting to enjoy the music. And Roxy Music is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've had songs that everyone will recognize. They were on an esoteric cutting edge at a time where the combination of glam rock and early 70s freedom in music with the electronic aspect that Brian Eno had, with the coolness of Brian Ferry and great guitarists like Phil Manzanera, all of that was going on, and it still doesn't even come close to how fascinating this guy's life has been. So I think it's really going to be a very, very cool conversation. Lots of great music and a great evening. And, you know, I hope people will come out for it.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, you can at least count on one person to be there. I'll come out and see that. You sold me on it for sure. Steve, this conversation has reminded me of how much I miss you on the radio. I know I'm not the only one. So it was so great catching up with you tonight, man. It's good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Same here, and I'll join you for a bourbon at the Phil Manzanera show.
Hell yeah, dude. Okay.
And anyone else listening, I'll buy your bourbon too.
All right. You heard it here first, folks.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Have a good night.
See ya. Take care, John.